broadcast. Thank you, Mr. Lazar, for joining us. How successful do you think the government can be when it comes to reining in this surge pricing from the different carriers across the country, given the fact that we've seen that different issues have been brought up inside Parliament as well as at the government level when it comes to controlling this, the rise in prices during the festive season. But more than talk, we've not seen any consolidative action or anything concrete when it comes to government policy to control the price of airfares.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is a very welcome step by the Supreme Court, and I compliment the justices for saying that they will get involved in this. And they've issued notice to the DGCA, the ministry, as well as AERA to file their replies to this. We have seen over the last year or 2 years, during festivals, during crises, during rush times, fares go bananas. They really go crazy. We recently saw it during the Indigo crisis. And unfortunately for us in the Indian environment, our fares were deregulated quite some time back. So airlines adopt what is dynamic pricing, which allows them to raise the fares or bring it, give discounts. It goes up and down. Of course, you and I know it never goes down. It's always going up.
It's always going up.
But, they've also reduced baggage allowances and things like that. The government will now have to look at it very seriously, given the fact that the Supreme Court has now intervened here and asked them to file a reply. So I do not believe that the half measures that we saw during the Indigo crisis or the temporary caps that were put on, will now stay the course, because I think we'll have to now look at a structure where, airfares are topped off. You cannot go beyond a certain limit or a band. And I think maybe they'd have to introduce a seasonal band for flexible rates or airfares. You cannot, of course, regulate them all over again, because that would defeat the purpose of capitalism and having private airlines flying the skies. Right. So obviously, it's got to be balanced in my view.
Right, but that is the debate, and you, very significantly highlighted the Indigo crisis, and we saw very half-baked measures coming in from the government when it came to resolving that entire crisis. In fact, the entire crisis had to run its own course, and people suffered immensely across the country when it came to airfares as well as travel. So beyond the Supreme Court observations, even though the notice has been sent to the government and the DGCA, given the fact that we have the template of what happened during Indigo, do you expect anything significant to take place now?
Well, I definitely do expect something very significant, because it's the first time that the Honorable Supreme Court has stepped in. Mm-hmm. You will remember there were PILs filed during the Indigo crisis, which were rejected by the Honorable Supreme Court and said, go back to the Delhi High Court. This is the gateway, I think, to a lot of reform that needs to come in. And mind you, we also need to look at the passenger charter, and I'd be very happy to join in this, because I do believe this passenger charter that we have in our country needs to be rewritten. It's very anti-passenger, if I had to say so. I think it's time that all airlines, I can also see that the Supreme Court will probably make all airlines party in the next round. This is going to become a big PIL. It's not just a small little thing that started. It's going to explode, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of reform. I had said, on your channel and other channels, during the Indigo crisis, this could be, the start of something big. It could be an attempt to reform aviation within India, and maybe this is a good step. We have the Honorable Supreme Court stepping in.
Right, but at the same time, do you think that we suffer from a lack of good choices? Because if you look at the entire aviation sector, there are only a few carriers that have a great reputation of taking off on time and landing on time. Now, given the fact that you're at the mercy of a majority of carriers who don't have a great reputation when it comes to services, this surge pricing crisis only continues year after year.
Well, you have to look at the history of Indian aviation in the last 30 years or 35 years. You've seen almost 18 airlines shut down. Mm-hmm. It's a very expensive business to run in our country. Perhaps a step should be made, and I've said this ad nauseum, that the government must loosen its grip on taxes, make it more, viable for airline owners to operate. That's why you see surge fares and you see all these, strict enforcement of baggage regulations, reduction of baggage allowance, because airlines want to make money, they want to break even. And it's so difficult in today's climate with dollar-denominated lease rents, with dollar-denominated fuel uplift, cost of everything has gone up. It's very difficult. Dollars at 90. So an airline that started when the dollar was 50 or 60 or 70 is suffering. So I think the government needs to take a holistic view of the industry and treat it like an infrastructure industry. Give them more SOPs so that airlines can pass on these things. There's almost a 50+% taxation, various slabs on airlines. So I don't really blame them. The ticket fare doesn't reach them. It goes to the government.
Right. So, as you're pointing out, there is a taxation model that is a burden on several carriers. But at the same time, if they're delivering those good services, like if you just look at Indigo, I think it's got the best reputation in the market. Indigo has always made this point that its surge pricing is something we require to deliver good services. This entire thing of a capitalist kind of setup where more cost, or at least more cost on the customer, equals good services. Do you think that is the narrative that they tend to hide behind, which is why we see these exploitative prices continue to emerge within the aviation industry?
Well, I don't know if many people will agree with your statement that Indigo is the benchmark of service. Is definitely a good airline. So is Air India, so is Akasa. So, I say all of them are good airlines. They all perform well. But you're right. Surge pricing is not, I do not agree with the statement that surge pricing is needed to provide additional or better services. No, there is a certain standard of service that you're guaranteed to get as a passenger when you buy a ticket, and that must be the benchmark. You can't say if I charge you more, I'll give you a better service. Yes, if I charge you more and put you in a higher class, I'll give you a more enhanced service. But the benchmark has to be, of good, clean, safe, and on-time performance. So that's something that the government should also look at. I think by and large, most airlines do try and keep to timings. OTP, is still above 60, 70, 80%. Of course, Indigo was in the 90s. They're probably getting there again. But I think that's only one aspect. Price and service are the two determinants that every passenger wants. There's also, of course, since this PIL has opened up a Pandora's box, as I see it. What about the services at the airports? Yeah. You have people who are selling samosas at 800 rupees and 400 rupees, and you have people who are selling. Of course, the government has made a step in that direction in a couple of airports across the country having their own shops. But we need to look at this entire capitalist model and say, okay, hold on. We are capitalists, but let's, put a cap on how capitalist we are.
Right, but at the end of the day, Mr. Lazar, what kind of immediate measures you can see that the government can implement, given the fact that, let's say, the government ends up taking this issue very seriously? Because time and time again, I've seen several members of parliament raise this matter inside the House, saying that this is exploiting the common man when it comes to traveling by air. What kind of immediate steps can the government take to cap these prices?
Well, I'll tell you, when you spoke of parliamentarians, they only, make a lot of noise on social media and stuff. I've not really seen them getting together, even from the ruling party, to put down, hardcore rules. Okay, the government will now begin firefighting with the DGCA on this petition. And I hope more and more passengers join this petition or organizations, because we need to make a very clear redefinition of Indian aviation, whether it's passenger charter, whether it's services charter that you deserve from an airline, also prices. And this is not against the airlines. Let me be very clear. Airlines also should step in and demand that taxes have to be capped. This is a time when we can refresh everything. So, excuse me.
Go on.
So I'm looking forward to this, and I do believe we could be on the cusp of something big. So fingers crossed. I'm looking forward to the 23rd of Feb when it's next heard.
Right. So 23rd of Feb is when the next hearing will take place. But the Supreme Court has also made those stinging observations, sending that notice to both the government and the DGCA. The Supreme Court, at the same time, Mr. Lazar, time and again, we've seen on several issues, they've made their observations. But it tends to stay towards observations. To a great extent, we don't see any movement. People form a committee, then you wait for the report, then you wait for the report to be assessed, then you wait for the replies of the commercial sector. it goes into this solid rigmarole. So unless the the system is jolted by what we saw in the Indigo crisis, these kind of issues don't gain the momentum that passengers and consumers at the end of the day require it to.
Well, thanks to TV channels like yourselves that bring this to the notice of the public, it will jolt the public as well as our parliamentarians who've been in a stupor to raise this. And I'm sorry, I know a lot of them will get upset by me saying that, but this is something that we need to take up strongly. And I hope a lot of them put their right foot forward and make a strong plea, because we've got, unfortunately, the government has not really pulled its weight in favor of the passengers in all fronts. It's okay to make blasé statements and propaganda stuff, but let's be very clear. If you compare passenger charters in Europe, the US and India, we are at the bottom of the ladder. If you compare the surge pricings and stuff, we are at the top of the ladder. So I think we'll get a revolution. I do believe that this is the right case.
Right, and my final question, Mr. Lazar, how pivotal do you see social media when it comes to this revolution? Because I think social media has been that force where everyone is able to document their experience with the airlines and put it out to millions and millions of people. I think central to that revolution that you're talking about, and the government taking note of all of these things, even the Supreme Court coming in and making these observations, is the revolution caused by social media, where millions of people are able to tell their stories, in fact their horror stories, and direct that to millions of people across the globe, as well as put the government on the mat and including the carriers.
Well, social media is, of course, the new television, and television has become the new newspaper. So it's, as attention spans reduce across our Gen Z and Gen Millennials and, all the new gens, social media will be and is the big thing. So every person worth his or her salt, every company has a social media profile. And what happens is, when you get bad service or you get fleeced or you get hurt, you went on social media. And we've seen this during the Indigo crisis, during the Kumbh Mela, during the Diwali season. People tag ministers, people tag parliamentarians. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court is not on Twitter or something, but people would have been tagging them. So I think it's very, very powerful. It's very, very efficient. And I will compliment the airlines here. I've seen across the board, they're very responsive nowadays on social media. And that's a very positive step. I also hope that, more, activism amongst passengers and people, on social media translates actually to real change in the aviation market and the passenger requirements, passenger comforts and stuff like that. It's things are happening.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see whether that revolution kind of goes beyond these observations of the Supreme Court. Thank you, Mr. Lazar, for joining us on the broadcast.